We will start with the next topic in module 3, main memory. Main memory is one of the most important part of the computer system. Without this, computer will not do any operation. That is, it will not perform any operation on the system, because the main memory is needed to execute any program on the system. Consider your program is there in the secondary memory, but CPU cannot access directly program which is there in the secondary memory. So what we need to do is, when you want to execute the program which is there in the secondary memory, the program has to be loaded itself into the main memory, and from the main memory the CPU can directly access the program and will start executing the program. Okay, we'll see what are the things you need to consider in main memory. Okay, we'll see what are the objectives of main memory. First one is to provide a detailed description of various ways of organizing memory hardware. So first we are discussing about different ways of organizing memory hardware, and second we are discussing various memory management techniques including paging and segmentation. And third, we are discussing a detailed description of Intel Pentium, which supports both pure segmentation and segmentation with paging. Okay, let's discuss the background behind main memory and the basic hardware that is required for the main memory. Okay, first we'll see the background behind main memory. The program must be brought from disk into memory and placed within a process for it to be run. That is, the program which is there in a disk, when it is ready for the execution, it must be copied from the disk to the main memory and placed within a process. The process is nothing but when a program is ready for the execution in main memory, it is called as a process, so that CPU can access this process directly from the main memory so that it can run this process. Okay, the main memory and the register are only storage CPU can access directly. The main memory and the registers are the general purpose storage that the CPU can access directly. There are machine instructions that can take memory addresses as argument but will not take disk addresses as argument. Therefore, any instruction in execution and any data being used by the instruction must be in one of these direct access storage devices. If the data are not in memory, it must be moved from the disk to the main memory before the CPU can operate on them. Okay. Memory unit only sees a stream of addresses during the read request, and during the write request it requires only address and the data. So that is, I'll write the data onto that address. Okay. Register access in one CPU clock or less. That is, the registers that are built into the CPU are generally accessible within one cycle of the CPU clock. Most CPUs can decode instructions and perform simple operations on register contents at the rate of one or more operations per clock tick. Completing a memory access may take many cycles of the CPU clock. In such cases, the processor normally needs to stall, since it does not have the data required to complete the instruction that is currently executing. So this situation is intolerable because of the frequency of memory access. In order to reduce the frequency of memory access, we need to add fast memory between CPU and the main memory. It is called as a cache. So cache will be sits between the main memory and the CPU register. It is typically kept on the CPU chip for the fast access. Okay, to manage a cache built onto the CPU, the hardware automatically speeds up memory access without any operating system control. Okay. Protection of memory is required to ensure the correct operation. So, for proper system operation, we must protect the operating system from access by user processes. Okay, next we'll discuss base and limit register. We'll see why these two registers are required in main memory. We first need to make sure that each process has a separate memory space, and separate per process memory space protects the processes from each other and is fundamental to having multiple processes loaded in memory for concurrent execution. To separate memory spaces, we need the ability to determine the range of legal addresses that the process may access and to ensure that the process can access only these legal addresses. We can provide this protection by using two registers, base and a limit. The base register holds the smallest legal physical memory address, and limit register specifies the size of range. For example, the base register holds 3 lakhs 40 and limit register is 1,20,900. Okay, if I add these two values, base plus limit, will get 4,20,940. Then the program can legally access all the addresses from 3 lakhs to 40 through 4,20,940, which is inclusive. So the program can legally access all the addresses between the 3 lakhs 40 to 4,20,940. Okay, the pair of base and limit register defines the logical address space. So the pair of these two registers will define the logical address space. The CPU must check every memory access generated in a user mode to ensure that the user process must be between base and the limit. Okay, next we'll discuss hardware address protection. The protection of memory space is accomplished by having the CPU hardware compare every address generated in the user mode with the registers. That is, the CPU generated address is compared with the base and the base plus limit. Suppose if the generated address, if it is between these two values, then it can access the memory. Suppose if it is not within this range, then it will give the error that is trapped to the operating system. That is, whenever any program that is executing in the user mode, it is tried to accessing the operating system memory and other users memory, results in a trap to the operating system, which gives the fatal error, that is addressing error. So this scheme prevents the user program from modifying the code or the data structures of either operating system or other users. Okay, the base and the limit registers can be loaded only by the operating system, which uses a special privilege instruction. Since the privilege instruction can be executed only in the kernel mode, and also the operating system executes only in kernel mode, so that only the operating system can load base and limit registers. This scheme allows the operating system to change the value of the registers, but prevents the user programs from changing the register contents. Okay, next we'll discuss address binding. In address binding, usually a program resides on a disk as a binary executable file. When it is to be executed, it must be brought into the memory and placed within a process. Depending upon the memory management in use, the process may be moved between disk and memory during its execution. The process on the disk that are waiting to be brought into the memory for execution form the input queue. Okay, the normal single tasking procedure is to select one of the processes in the input queue and to load that process into the memory. As a process executed, it accesses the instruction and data from the memory. When the process terminates, its memory space is declared as available. Okay, the most system allow a user process to reside in any part of the physical memory. The address space of the computer may start at 0000. This is the first address of the user process, need not be 000. You will see later how a user program actually places a process in physical memory. Okay. Next, we need to represent how the addresses are represented in different ways at different stages of a program's life. So when during the program execution we have source program, and at the end you'll get the executable files. So there is nothing but, see in the diagram, so we have source program. The addresses that is represented in different ways during these steps. So addresses in the source program are generally symbolic, such as variable count. A compiler binds these symbolic addresses to a relocatable addresses. Then the linkage editor and the loader that will binds the relocatable addresses to the absolute addresses. Each binding is a mapping from one address space to the another. Okay, so here we have compile time. So during the compile time, the source program will be converted into object module. Then linkage editor, it will link with other object modules with the generated object module, and it will generate the load module. And during the load time, the load module with the combined with the system library, it loads all the system libraries with the load module, and then it will generate the binary memory image in the during the after loading the system libraries. And also it links dynamically loaded system library during the execution time. Okay, so we have three the binding of instruction and data to the memory addresses to be done at any steps in three ways. One is compile time binding, next one is load time address binding, next third one is the execution time address binding. Okay, so you'll see the binding of instructions and data to memory. So first one we have compile time. So there is address binding of instructions and data to memory addresses can happen at three different stages. First one is compile time. In compile time, if memory location is known a priori, absolute code can be generated. Must compile code if starting location changes. That is, if you know at compile time where the process will reside in memory, then absolute code can be generated. For example, if you know that user will reside starting at location R, then the generated compiler code will start at the location and extend up from there. If at a later time the starting location changes, then it will be necessary to recompile this code. Okay, next one we have load time. It must generate a relocatable code if memory location is not known at the compile time. So if it is not known at the compile time where the process will reside in memory, then the compiler must generate relocatable code. In this case, the final binding is delayed until load time. If the starting address changes, we need only reload the user code to incorporate this change value. And last one we have execution time. Binding delayed until the runtime if the process can be moved during its execution from one memory segment to the another. That is, if the process can be moved during its execution from one memory segment to the another, then the binding must be delayed until runtime. The special hardware must be available for this scheme to work. So most general purpose operating system use this method. So it requires need hardware support for the address mapping, that is base and limit registers. Okay, these are the three different types of address binding in memory. Okay, next we'll discuss logical versus physical address space. The concepts of a logical address space that is bound to a separate physical address space is central to proper memory management. We'll see what is these two address. Okay, first we'll see logical address. The logical address is generated by the CPU and it is also referred to as a virtual address. So this address is generated by the CPU and it is also called as a virtual address. And physical address, this address is seen by the memory unit. and this address is loaded into the MAR of the memory, that is memory address register of the memory, and this is the actual address that is seen by the memory unit. Okay, so we have studied a 3 different binding scheme: compile time, load time, and execution time address binding scheme. Okay, in compile time and load time address binding scheme, these two addresses, logical and physical addresses, are same, but in execution time address binding scheme, the logical and physical addresses are different. Okay, the logical address space is a set of all logical addresses generated by the program, and the physical address space is a set of all physical addresses generated by the program. Okay, next we'll discuss memory management unit. It is also called as MMU. So this is a hardware device that at runtime it maps virtual to the physical address. That is, it is a runtime mapping from virtual to the physical address by using the hardware device. It is called as a memory management unit, and we can implement this memory management unit, that is mapping from the virtual to the physical address through the base register. It is called as a relocation register. Okay, the value in the relocation register is added to the every address generated by the user process at the time it is sent to the memory. So now here in memory management unit, how it will convert the virtual to the physical address. So we have relocation address. So every address that generated by the user process that is added to the relocation address will give the physical address. For example, you can consider here the CPU generated address. Here it is logical address, that is 346. The logical address is 346. Now we need to convert this logical address to the physical address. So that is done by the MMU. So MMU has relocation register value, that is 14,000. So now MMU, how it will convert logical address to the physical address is, it will add this value 346 value with the relocation register. Will get 14,346. So this is the physical address of the memory. So now here the logical address 346 is mapped to the location 14,346. Okay. The MS-DOS on Intel 8086 used 4 relocation registers. The user program deals with the logical address. It never sees the real physical addresses. Okay, the memory mapping hardware converts the logical address into the physical address. So this will here in this mapping, the execution time binding occurs when reference is made to the location in memory. And here we have two types of addresses. Consider we have logical addresses from 0 to max value. So we have logical addresses range from 0 to max, and we have consider relocation register values are. Okay, now we need to convert this range 0 to max value of logical address. We need to convert into physical address range. So we need to add this value with this R. So 0 plus R to 0 plus R to max plus R will give the physical address. So the user program generates only the logical address, thinks that the process runs in location 0 to max, but these logical address must be mapped to the physical address before they are used. The concepts of logical address space that is bound to the physical address space is central to the proper memory management. Okay, next we'll discuss dynamic loading. In dynamic loading, routine is not loaded until it is called. And to provide better memory space utilization, we can use dynamic loading. And here, unused routines is never loaded. All routines kept on a disk in a relocatable load format. That is, the main program is loaded into the memory and it is executed. When a routine needs to call another routine, the calling routine first checks to see whether the other routine has been loaded. If it has not loaded, the relocatable linking loader is called to load the desired routine into the memory and to update the program's address tables to reflect this change. Then the control is passed to the newly loaded routine. So advantage of this one is it is useful when large amounts of code are needed to handle infrequent occurring cases such as error routines. Okay, so dynamic loading, it does not require special support from the operating system. That is, it is implemented through the program design. It is the responsibility of the users to design their programs to take the advantage of such a method. And operating system can help by providing libraries to implement the dynamic loading. That is, operating system may help the programmer by providing library routines to implement dynamic loading. Okay, next we'll discuss dynamic linking and shared libraries. Dynamically linked libraries are system libraries that are linked to the user program when the programs are run. So most of the some operating system will support only static linking, in which the system libraries and the program code combined by the loader into binary program image. So in starting linking, the system libraries and program code that is combined with the loader and it will convert into binary program image. The dynamic linking is similar to the dynamic loading, but here the linking is postponed until execution time. Okay, there is a small piece of code is called as a stub. With dynamic linking, a stub is included in the image for each library routine reference. A stub is a small piece of code that indicates how to locate the appropriate memory resident library routine or how to load the library if the routine is not already present. When the stub is executed, it checks to see whether the needed routine is already in the memory. If it is not, the program loads the routine into the memory. Either way, the stub replaces itself with the address of the routine and executes the routine. Okay. Now here, with dynamic linking, operating system checks if routine is in processor's memory address. If it is not in address space, add the address space. And dynamic linking is particularly useful for the libraries. And so in this feature can be extended to the library updates. A library may be replaced by a new version, and all programs that reference the library will automatically use the new version. Okay, the shared libraries is nothing but the other programs linked before newly library was installed will continue using the older library. This system is known as a shared library. And here they consider the applicability to patching system libraries, so versioning may be needed. Okay, so unlike dynamic loading, the dynamic linking and shared libraries generally require help from the operating system. If the processes in memory are protected from one another, then the operating system is the only one entity that can check to see whether the needed routine is in another processor's memory space, or that can allow multiple processes to access the same memory addresses.